Hi all, it's Greg Wilkins here, the MYC Handicapper, and I just thought I'd go through a lot of the data that we have from the races from last season that we're going to be using to set the handicaps going forward, and just to show you how the handicap system worked last year. Um, it's always, remember the handicaps are always wrong, and lots of people are very happy to tell me as such. If we got the handicaps perfectly right, every race would be a dead heat. It's not. And so, yes, let's have a look at the data of what we've got. So I'm just going to go through all the data we have. All the plots I have of it. Feel free when your particular races of interest come up or your particular boat design comes up to freeze the video and stare at the graphs somewhat in more detail. Anyway, so we're going to look at the club champs first off, and we'll see the same sort of plots for each series we've got. What I'm off showing here is the elapsed time for each of the races. So on the bottom we have the races 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10, and on the left we have the number of minutes that the boat took to get around the racetrack. So obviously the faster boats are at the bottom of the screen and the slower boats at the top of the screen. The first thing to note is that if all the boats were very consistent and always sailed to their capabilities, none of these lines would cross. That the fast boats would always be faster than the slower boats, and we'd just get this, a rainbow effect of parallel lines. The other thing to note is that the duration of the races is varied somewhat. We had some races 200 minutes or 245 for one poor boat. And then a lot of the other races, like race 4, looked like the slowest boat got around in, about 145 minutes. So we have a variability in the race duration. So the next slide I have is I normalize all those races to say, well, let's make the average time for each race the same, and then we can actually compare races with each other. And again, if all boats were consistent, none of these lines would cross. And we can see we have lots of crossing lines. We have, some boats are fast one week, slow the next. Others are improving through the season. Kia Kaha there looked very good, although she declined a little bit towards the end of the season. 1060, the yellow one there, started off with a howler, very slow. But was able then to come up with some consistent results for the rest of the season. So this is the raw data, which is the elapsed time into which we feed the handicapping algorithm. And so the first thing we have to do to calculate handicaps, and what I'm going to explain here is a bit of a mix of the algorithms implemented by SailSys and some of the algorithms I'm using to analyze. And I'll try and make the distinction between the two a little clearer as we go on. So here this is a chart of what's called the back calculated handicap. So this is looking for each race, what handicap would a boat needed to have for all the boats to finish in a tie. And so there's more than one solution for this. You can scale this picture up and down, but I've tried to scale it close to the handicaps that we originally had allocated to these boats. If the handicaps were perfect, all these lines would be level. Or if the handicaps were perfect and the boats were sailing to their handicaps, these lines would be horizontal. But you can see that what's happening is that each week some boats do better and some boats do worse, which is the whole point of going racing. And we have to now look at this information, and not only do we have to decide who won each race from this sort of information, we have to set up a handicap for the next the race. And essentially what the algorithms that get used are taking an average of the back calculated handicap over the last your most normal results or your best results at 6 out of 7 races. So we'll look at 7 races, look at the back calculated handicaps for that, and use those to calculate the handicap for the next race. And so the interesting thing then is that when we're calculating a handicap for, say, this race here, how the boat went in the last race is just as important as how they went in the last 7 races, and even the one that drops off the back will affect the way the handicap changes the next week as much as the one that was just dropped on the front. So if we look at the next slide, we can see that how we're looking at taking this volatility of boats that are up and down each week or changing over the season, and how we put that into the actual allocated handicaps. So this is the handicaps that we allocated for the boats over the season, and this is the algorithm that SailSys is implementing. And so they're trying to smooth out the handicaps, because if we just allocated the handicap as it was last week, then it would just be too volatile and it wouldn't reflect a boat that's sailing well. The other thing that SailSys tries to do is to reject outliers. So if someone has a completely shocking race, or if someone has a too good to be true good result, those will be rejected. Or if the whole race is just, it's inverted the wrong way, and so the slow boats are beating the fast boats, something obviously very strange happened. So we can see here that Yellow 1060, they had not a really bad first race, and that was more than what could be explained by their sailing. They obviously went the wrong way, had a gear failure, something was wrong. So their handicap actually didn't change from the first race to the second race, despite, look back there, this really, really bad first race. And so that's what the algorithm does. It tries to pick your most normal races and takes the average over the last, I think it's 5, 6 or 7, depending on the settings, races. And so the handicap's moving a lot slower. Some of these lines do cross, so as the season goes on, we work out, one boat might be doing better than another boat, and their handicaps will change around. But especially for the club champs, we have the settings set, so these are fairly level lines. If you see a lot of movement early on in the season, then that probably suggests that our initial handicaps weren't great. But these ones, the finishing handicaps are pretty close to the original handicaps, so we haven't been too bad in our initial handicaps. Although I'd have to say we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 boats over 10 races, and statistically both of those are very small samples. So as you can see, when we get to the twilights, we'll see better patterns coming through. Again, feel free to pause the video and look at these charts in any more detail. So these next lot of charts, I'm looking at each individual race to see how the handicap did at reflecting what happened on the water. And there's 3 sets of numbers plotted here, and I have to say the club champs, the plots don't really look like they should. So the dotted lines for Div 2 and Div 1 is just the actual elapsed time versus the handicap the boat was given. So you'd expect the boat with a lower handicap, the smaller handicap, to take longer to get around the track. So what you're expecting is to see a dotted line sloping like this. And in Div 2, it's very sloped that way. In Div 1, it's not really sloped at all. You put an average line there. So something strange was happening here. The fact that the higher handicap boats were going around slower than the lower handicap boats. And if that sort of pattern persists, something's very wrong. So that's the elapsed time. The dark bold line, red for Div 2 and blue for Div 1, is what the handicap does to that. That's the corrected time for the handicap of that race. And it should be level, because what we're trying to do is get all the results to be more or less the same. The handicap's striving to make a tied result. So you'd expect to see this bold line level. And in Div 2, not so much. And in Div 1, it's kind of level, but then the raw data was kind of level as well. And I have to say, in the club champs, none of the races really reflect the pattern that you'd expect to see. The thin solid line in red and blue is if we look at all the handicaps given and pick a single handicap for a boat and apply that throughout the season. What would the results be? And again, that should be a fairly level line. And it's interesting to see the difference between the bold changing handicap as you go and picking a single handicap for a season. And I guess the single handicap we're picking here is probably the candidate handicap that we might use to feed the next season. So that's race 1. Div 2 sort of okay, not really. Div 1 very strange. Again, race 2 not seeing the patterns we want to see. Let's see when we get the first one. Okay, so race 4, obviously Div 2 didn't compete, Div 1 did. So this is starting to be a little bit what you expect to see. Here we have the sloping line with a bit, you're going to get a big zigzag, as some boats are better than others. The sloping dotted line showing the elapsed time of the slowest boat to the fastest boats, and then the handicaps coming in and trying to correct that. And so it's almost level, although the slower boats seem to have slightly worse of it, and this is maybe favouring the faster boats in this result. Either that was the day's racing, and I guess seeing that Div 2 wasn't there, I'm assuming it was probably a light race, or was it a strong race? It was obviously one or the other. We didn't miss a whole division. And you can also see that if we just allocated a single handicap, that's done a very good job of leveling off the boats. So the candidate handicaps we've got are quite good for race 4. Okay, Div 2's okay there. There's the trend dotted line is down, whereas the solid lines are a level trend. It's got a bit of a kink, but there's obviously wasn't many boats racing. Again, small sample. In Div 1, we've overcorrected, so the fast boats have got longer time, so it's a small boat race there. But we have at least turned the downward slope of the elapsed time to an upward slope of the corrected time, although we're aiming for level. And race 8, again, not really what no clear pattern. And 9 looking better. 9, Div 1's good. We have the downward slope here, and that's been leveled off by the results. Div 2's too small a sample size, really. It's overcorrected. It's over-leveled the downward slope. And here the moving handicap of Salesys is better than the single handicap that we've allocated. And finally, race 10. Div 2's okay, downward slope, level, and downward slope trend here being leveled up. So Div 1's not so bad, quite zigzaggy. I mean, the boats are acting variably, but that's what boats do. And so the trend of the dotted line, you'd say, would be down, as you expect, and the handicaps has leveled it up somewhat. And the fixed handicap is probably even better than the bold blue line. I should put trend lines in here. Anyway, so that shows you the sort of data I'm looking at to try and set the handicaps for the start of the season. You can see it when we look at some more data for the twilights, the bigger the sample size, the better the data often is. Here's the summer series, the same sort of thing. We've got the elapsed times. None of these lines should cross if everyone was being consistent. I've normalized those up so all the race durations on average are the same. And so again, we can see that actually boats were quite consistent early on between races 2. There was no race 3, race 4. There's only one crossing line, so that was consistent. Then race 5, we start getting a bit of zigzags. Race 6, a lot more inconsistency. Race 7, yep. So boats go up and down. How does that look in the back calculated handicaps? As you'd expect, lots of crossing lines, lots of variability in behaviour, more so in the second half of the season than in the first half of the season. So what you'd expect to see with consistent sailing the first half of the season is that should settle the handicaps in, and they shouldn't have changed too much, and that should probably be maintained for the rest of the season as the boats get a little bit more erratic. And We have one boat here, 1060, was their handicap increased during the season. How'd they sail? Oh yeah, the times were going down, so that's the handicap was going down. Okay. They were improving in the beginning of the season, and then as the handicap caught up, they then had their worst race. Yes, as often is the way. Okay, so these are the actual races. Here's our downward averaging trend on the dotted line, and the handicap's trying to level up. Again, it looks like this was a small boat or slow boat favoured race, either through handicaps or just the conditions of the day. And so again, we're going to look at the trend to see if this line is always, tilted towards the small boats, something's a little bit wrong, or if it's too jaggedy all the time. So that's race 2, race 4. That's quite a good one. That's bold line's pretty level, the trend. So it's corrected the downward slope to quite level, and it's gone the other way. Well, so it's not the same as race 4. Race 5, very good. Again, the boats in the middle of the fleet looked like they won it, but then one of the fast boats probably came second. So that's a nice looking graph, what you'd expect to see. And race 7. So the data in the summer series is looking a lot cleaner than the data in the club champs. Boats were sailing a little bit more or less erratically, and the handicaps have been able to correct quite nicely for that. And pardon me. Race 8, again a nice clean. We have again the downward slope that you'd expect with the uncorrected times, and the corrected times being quite level. Okay, so we're getting some bigger data sets here. Here's our twilight female helms. It's amazing how you can see the race duration. This is just the pure elapsed time increased significantly over the different races. So some of these races were only 40 minutes, and then the longer races were 90 minutes. So we equalised the time, and again we can see a lot of crossing lines here, and it's the back calculated handicaps, lots of crossing lines, boats behaving erratically, and then we've levelled it up into those handicaps there. But the actual plots of the individual races, we can see the handicaps are doing what they're meant to do. The trend line for the elapsed time is proportional to the handicap. The low handicaps are taking longer, and the high handicaps are finishing quicker. And the trend lines for the Sailsys handicap is pretty level. Although, again, in this case, the small boats were probably favoured over the bigger boats, just slightly. And if that happens on every race, you have to worry, but I don't think it does. Well, that one, it's the small boats, slow boats are slightly favoured, but here is a race that went the other way. The fast boats were slightly favoured, but again, this is looking good data. The handicap's doing its job, taking the slopey line from that with the erratic behaviour of the boats and levelling it off. And again, so this is race 4. The fast boats were probably slightly favoured. And back to race 5, the slow boats were slightly favoured. So this is showing not that the handicaps were wrong. This is showing that race conditions vary, and there's nothing we can do in a fixed in a handicap that we put before the race to allow for the different length of the race, different conditions, and changing conditions during the race. The boats that go off first might get the better of the wind and dies, or vice versa. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to pick out the detail of these ones very much because this is the full twilight. Here's our elapsed times. You can see we had a couple of really short races early on, and then we got into sort of fairly consistent up and down. There's the plot of I've just averaged out. I've taken the average time of the boats that went to the race and made it the same for each race, and we can see that we have a lot of crossing lines in here. So that's showing that the boats don't sail to their handicaps, boats sail erratically, and this is the noisy data from which the handicaps somehow have to make sense. It's interesting to get some boats that trend slower. If any boats that are trending faster, probably somebody in there. Alright, so back calculator handicaps, very noisy data. Big swings backwards and forwards. Lots of boats having good weeks, then bad weeks, and good weeks, and then bad weeks. And then from that, we have to come out with our handicaps. That's the handicaps that were allocated and how the Salesforce algorithm changed them. Some boats seem to have a bit of a change. We do have it a little bit more aggressively set for the handicaps. So you can see there's probably a lot more change early on as boats settle in and then get steady afterwards. Yeah, we do let the handicaps change a bit faster in the twilights than we do in other series. And let's have a look at the individual races to see if the algorithm's doing its job. There's a perfect looking plot. So the downward trend that you'd expect for the elapsed times from the slow boats to the fast boats and the handicaps. This race one, so this is our initial handicaps, has come out pretty level. The trend line's level. You've got boats up and down because some boats go faster and slower, but in general we haven't biased it towards the slow boats or the fast boats, and there's no huge things. I mean, it's probably it's within the variance of the boats themselves. Tend to zigzag up and down more than what the handicap would allow. So let's have a look at a few more. Race 2, another lovely one. Nice level lines. Maybe the slower boats a bit advantaged there. Slower boats a bit advantaged there. Some big spikes here, but I think that's just a boat having a shocker. Don't know who that is. You could work it out if you really wanted to. It was a boat that was on 0.96. Okay. Here's one that, again, the slow boats are favoured. Actually, tending early in the season, the slow boats often do get a bit of advantage because there's just not enough time for a decent race. But the graph itself is looking pretty good. The handicaps are levelling out that slope from the elapsed time, as you'd expect. Slow boats did better in that one by race 6. Now it's race 7. It's very level. Very erratic. Race 8. Okay, but race 9, I'd still say maybe the trend is towards favouring the smaller boats. That's a good level one, maybe slightly favouring the faster boats. And now the faster boats being favoured. Then this again is probably, as the race 11, we're really into the longer races, and so any variations in the handicaps can be flushed out in the longer race a little bit better. Nice chart there. You've got a few peaks, outliers, but they're not in the same place as the peaks in the previous one, for instance. So it's like different boats are having their turn to have a bad day on the racetrack. Again, that's good towards the bigger boats. Nice looking chart. Well, it's quite erratic, that one. Less boats in it than normal, so could have been a windy race or something. Another erratic one, but again the algorithm's doing its job. The bold red line, if you put a trend through that would be level. So that's what you expect to see. Another good looking one, 19. We had some boats here, 2 boats. Oh no, that's one boat. Those 3 vertices would be the same boat, having a brilliant race. Got around really quick. Don't know who that was. But the trend across here is level. And the last race was a bit weird. I can't remember what the last race was like. But again, if you look over those 20 odd races, the handicap's doing its job. The line is mostly level. Occasionally it's biased towards the slow boats. Occasionally it's biased towards the fast boats. Occasionally it was biased in the middle to the mid boats. So, the variations of the correction of the handicap was much less than the variations we see in some boats having good days and bad days. So finally, we just go through the winner series data. Won't talk to it too much. Do your snapshots to have a look-see. This is our raw elapsed time for all the boats, and that's the normalised elapsed time. Lots of crossing lines, especially early on. We had quite some driftathons, and so some boats the results would have been quite mixed up, and that's reflected in our back calculated handicaps. Lots of crossing lines. Although if you look in there, there's a bit of a trend between race 2 and 3. There is a bunch of boats that the lines are parallel and don't cross, and then there's another bunch of boats where it goes up the other way. It's kind of like groups of boats going the right way versus groups of boats going the wrong way, and maybe it's consistently doing so between multiple races. So that's the where's the back calculated handicap? Oh, that's the back calculated handicaps there. That was the normalised time. Yes. There's our handicaps. We had this on quiet and aggressive setting. So here's poor little Esprit starting on just under 0.98, and we finished on 1.04. So that was quite a big swing in our handicap. So that shows you what you have aggressive settings on. But even with aggressive settings, a lot of the handicaps on other boats didn't change too much, because taking the average, and if you're averaging about the same, and over, I think it was 5 races, the best 3 of 5, I think this was set to, with we expanded the clip to allow abnormalities to be counted. So that's where we get there. Can we look at the individual races? Well, the elapsed time here, again, it's not very slopey, so that's showing it's a bit of a weird race, especially in Div 2. Div 1, it's got the right sort of slope, and but the good thing is the trend of the corrected time is more level than the trend of the elapsed time. So handicap hasn't done too bad a job. That's quite nice for a race 3 again. It was another bit of a driftathon. At least the slope's right, and the corrected time is level. The slope is correct, and the corrected time's a bit more level, although the faster boats were probably biased a little bit. Again, the elapsed times here don't show the right sort of trend. Race 4 was obviously a bit of a constant time to get around the racetrack, which kind of probably affects that everyone was parked, and then we all sailed at the same slow pace around. And race 5, no, Div 2, oh, that was a real slow race, yes, and Div 2 didn't finish. No, Div 1 didn't finish, but Div 2 did, so it's just Div 2. So yes, don't think there's much to take out of that. And then finally race 6, again we can see here by the time, I think this is a normal race, and the handicaps had been corrected for all those slow races, so we've got a very flat line here, and the handicaps have overcorrected. And yeah, so I don't think race 6 was a great, although the trend for the red line there is just fine. It's just Div 1 I think is it's not great. Anyway, so I think that's all the data I've got. Oh no, actually I've got the boat design data. So these plots, what I've done is I've gone and got all the handicaps in the Salesys database for a particular design. It's like the 5.5. You can see 6 boats with 5.5, and I'm plotting their non-spinnaker handicaps and their spinnaker handicaps, and then I put a little dot on it where our 5.5 is. So you can see that we're being easy to our 5.5 because these plots exclude our races, and these are how 5.5s are handicapped at other clubs. So we're being easy on our 5.5 compared to other 5.5s. So we get Adams 10s. So we can see there's that's the handicaps of Adams 10s. There's this double peaks you get sometimes, and I'm a bit worried that sometimes one of the peaks aligns with 1.0, which means that people might be allocating handicaps for a class rather than allocating it for the actual boat itself. but you can see that our Adams 10s are all on this curve at some stage when they've come along. One was favoured, one was penalised, but obviously that's the individual history of those boats. I'll click through these quite quickly because we've got a lot of designs. When you see your design, you have to pause and have a look to see it. So we got the Archambault 31. I think we only had one of those come race with us, and we were quite cruel to it actually, compared to what other clubs were. Archambault 32, which is Lost Horizon and Esprit. Well, you can see that we're quite cruel to them. We're on the cruel side to them for what they get handicapped at other clubs. The A35 here. Didn't we just do the A35? Oh no, the A31. Okay, yeah, the A35. Spot on. There's 5 boats, and the handicap we're giving ours is spot on in the non-Spinnaker. The Spinnaker chart, there is no clear peak. That's interesting, and they're down here, and also the this peak of the non-Spinnaker is this quite the same handicap as the Spinnaker, which you get sometimes. Azure 46, again, strange that the Spinnaker and the non-Spinnaker are much the same, but our dots on the peak. Barrett 10, no idea what that is. And again, you see the number of boats. Bavaria Match 35, looks fine. Match 38, Beneteau 41, only one boat. Beneteau 4232, 2 boats. Beneteau First 31.7, 18 boats. Outside of MYC, and when they race with us, we've handicapped them pretty close to the centre of their chart. 36.7. Here you can see the non-Spinnaker has 2 peaks. So there's and one of the peaks around 1. So that's probably some club allocating around 1 for this boat rather than what the boat should do, which makes the database a little bit inconsistent, but you can detect it by looking at these sort of charts. First 36, 40.7, first 40, interesting, no difference between their Spinnaker and their non-Spinnaker handicaps they're allocated. 47.7, same thing, no difference between the Spinnaker and non-Spinnaker handicaps, and that's over 23 votes, amazing. Oceanus 34, Oceanus 37, Oceanus 41.1, 41.1p, 51, and the Cape 31, Catalina 34. Again, this double peak, but that one there is not on 1, so don't know why. It's just obviously 2 sets of ways they're being handicapped, or maybe there's it's over 5 boats. Maybe there are some Catalina 34s that are just better option up than the other ones. 309, Cavalier 30, Cavalier 32, Cuppa 750, Cookson 12. So this is Canricky. We're obviously being nasty to her than the 4 other Cookson 12 other clubs, and weirdly enough, their non-Spinnaker handicap other clubs is worse than their Spinnaker handicap. Go figure. It's not MYC Handicaps, that's the other clubs around the harbour, or using Celsius. Delia 38, DK 46, Dufour 310, Dufour 382, East Coast 31, East Coast 31. This is the other problem is people spell their boats differently, so they get in their databases different designs where really they're the same. I do try and normalize it, but I haven't caught all of them. Elliot 7, Etchells, is that 181 boats? Wow. Far East 28R, Far East 28R, again, different spellings. Really need to go through the database and fix all those up. Far 36, Mum 36 modified. This is Quorum here against probably Georgia Express, but then you get Far Mum 36 to be entered. Far 30, Far 40, then the Far Mum 36 again. So it's the 3rd time that's turned up. Force 24s. This is our sales school boats. There's a big broad peak for this Force 24s, and the second one is suspiciously right on 1.0. So again, someone's allocating handicaps around 1 rather than what the boat should sail at. And ours are around what they should sail at, not around the 1s, which is good. Hansi 43, 345, Hansi 385, Hansi 430, 445, a Hick 30, 4 boats, okay, and we were cruel to that one. Hick 31, international 5.5. So we've had a 5.5 and now we have an international 5.5 and there's 4 boats. So again, they should be the same chart. Make the video a lot shorter. The J24s, this is interesting. The non-spinnaker, nice big peak, and we're sort of crueler to the J24s than the average club. This is on 75 boats. And then for the spinnakers, there's 3 peaks with 1, well, it's not really around 1, so I don't know why. And we've sort of, our boats are scattered all over that thing. Anything from over 1, wow. Don't know what that race was. And it was down to 8.2. Normally that's mostly our J24s allocated in this zone. To work out what that one was. That could have been like a mini regatta or a sprint or something. J35, J70s, J99. Again, it just works out that we're a little bit cooler to that's obviously Jupiter than the average club. But that's the numbers that work out against our fleet versus what the J9s do at other fleets, and that could be the different type of racing. That could be it's small sample size, those sort of things. 112, J12, J122, Jeanneau 39, Jeanneau 349, Jeanneau 409, Sun Odyssey 39, another double peak here, 409, Sun Odyssey 440, Eagle 38, oh that's a nice looking boat, and we're slightly cruel to it for this. Don't even know what that one is, a 60 footer. So MC 38, Emologist 24. This data is over quite a few seasons, by the way. Mum 30, we've already seen the FAR 30s. That's again same boat. Mum 36 modified. Oh my God, it's Cora Mute again. Married Burns Deval 41. Marries Burns Deval MBD, sorry. Swan 36. North Shore 27. North Shore 38. North Shore 340. North Shore 369. North Shore 370. NSX 38. And we're cruel defensive. One Design 35. That's Khaleesi. That's only one boat, so it's probably Khaleesi at some other event getting that handicap, and because she won the club champ, she's got a tough handicap at the moment. Payne 38, okay, that's obviously the same boat. Peterson 33, Radford 10.6, 1060, Radford 12, a Ross 830, Salona 37, Sequest RP 36. Lots of boats have sailed with us. The SNS 34, again, strange double peak, and there's very little difference between the spinnaker and the non-spinnaker handicaps. And Stuart 34, where their spinnaker handicaps are worse than their non-spinnaker handicaps. King 40, Abbey Rumba, Swanson Dart, this is Melody, which I think she appears several times. Swarbricks S80 modified. The S80 modified, S80 modified, they just entered different all the time. Sydney 36, CR, Sydney 38, so this is Mondo. Again, no difference between their spinnaker and non-spinnaker handicaps. It's just the way clubs are handicapping them. We've got a few dots there and one dot over here. Okay. TB52. Don't know what event that was. Another TB52. And unknown gets a nice big curve across the spectrum. Young 88, double peak, and back around the horn. Anyway, that's the raw data. You can see that it's a lot of noise in the data, a lot of variation in the boats, and somehow we have to pick out handicaps. Remember, the handicaps are always wrong. We're doing our best. The maths is trying its hardest, but unless you guys start sailing exactly the same way every week, it's never going to be perfect. Anyway, I hope that was a bit of information for you. Talk to you later. Bye.